What's going on, golf addicts? The first major of 2020 is upon us. It is the PGA Championship from TPC Harding Park. Welcome to the Tour Junkies podcast. I'm your host, David Barnett, joined by my co-host, the bearded Patrick Perry. How we doing, Pat? You bunkered down in Savannah doing the podcast during a potential hurricane here?
Yeah, doing great though. You know, we get to we're doing this early, do a little day drinking. Got beer for my podcast use tonight or today.
Okay.
And yeah, we're just waiting on this whatever it is, tropical storm Isaias or however you call it. I don't know it's Isaias.
Okay.
Anyway, if the power goes out, it means that it's come through and wiped everything out. But that's not going to happen. I know it's not going to happen tonight.
All of our YouTube viewers watching live are very proud of you, Pat, that you were on time today. We showed up when we said we would show up, so congratulations to you. You know, I was going to go with beer today for my podcast use because we are recording this. We usually record this at night. We typically have a lot of podcast use, adult beverages to get us going. But we did decide to go ahead and do this at 2 p.m. Eastern on Monday is what time it is right now as we're recording. And I was going to reach in and grab a beer, but then when I went to get a cold mug out of the freezer and I saw that Wild Leap vodka.
Oh, it was calling your name out.
And there was only like this much left. And I'm supposed to be getting more like tomorrow. There's only like this much left. And I was like, you know what? I made me an Arnie Palmy with some Wild Leap vodka in a Master's cup. You know what I mean? Little sweet tea, little lemonade, and a little bit of that Wild Leap. Oh,
nice, refreshing drink on a summer day.
Yeah, I think that. So. I think so, bud. We are going to have a great show tonight. We're going to talk about DraftKings. We're going to talk about strategy, our picks. We're going to talk through the golf course, TPC Harding Park. Then we're going to have some betting picks. We're going to talk outrights, top 10s, top 20s. Currently, not a lot of matchup bets being offered on DraftKings Sportsbook at the moment, so tough to really get into those. Is this Pat remembering that he had to do his betting picks? Was that face? Was that the face?
Oh, no, I did. I got those. I got those. Don't worry.
Oh, I was surprised. And then at the end, we're going to have a little fun. We always have a fun segment at the end of every podcast that a lot of times goes off the rails, is most times not golf related. Sometimes it is. Tonight's going to be a little bit of both. So if you're a new listener, new viewer, that's what you can expect today for this episode for the PGA Championship. We're going to have a ton of great content coming out this week. Primarily, you gotta be a Nut Hut member. You know what I mean? If you've not already joined the Nut Hut, that is our 24/7 chat room through tourjunkies.com. You can become a member of the Nut Hut for just $10 a month or $90 a year. Absolutely nothing. Pat, we have now approached $2 million in Nut Hut winnings since the restart, based on more Twitter messages and DMs yesterday that came in, had some big winners. So shout out to you guys that are continuing to just crush it in the DFS streets. We had some sweats last week for the WGC and the Barracuda. Had some outright bets going, but none of them worked out. We didn't have JT. As we don't normally pick guys that short of odds. I don't get into the 9-1 plays. Just doesn't tickle me in the special spot. You know what I mean? But it was a great week in the Nut Hut. Again, had some inside information that came through late on Wednesday from our caddy friends. Shout out to Chalk Bomb Ben, who nailed the Chalk Bomb. Victor Hovland was our fade in the Chalk Bomb. Victor Hovland sucked last week. So props to him for that. We're going to have another great Chalk Bomb email dropping into your inboxes this Wednesday night. And I'm really excited for our Nut Hut this week, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the podcast. Pat, any critical observations from WGC? Obviously, Justin Thomas ends up winning by 3 shots as Brooks just kind of it away on the 18th hole as he went to hit that 3-wood and kind of gave it up. But any other observations that you think are critical as we approach the PGA Championship?
I think you can take a lot of information out of this past week. I mean, one being the demise of Brooks Koepka was greatly exaggerated, and as we come in here to a major, he is certainly in great form, extremely confident. I saw a quote today where somebody was asking him about that drive on 18, and he basically was like, "Look, I was barely off, and I would have done it again, and you needed to be aggressive there." He was trying to win the tournament. I can't fault him there, and so I think looking at what Brooks did, I think DJ got back into a little bit of form. I think that's interesting as well. Obviously, JT showing that he can challenge Rahm for maybe becoming the number one player in the world at some point. So that was good to see. Another one that I thought was interesting, and we may talk about him later, is Abraham Answer is a guy. If you just look at what he did last week, he had one bad round where he was 5 over. But other than that, you take that 5 over round and make it a 70 even par, he would have been right there in the hunt at the very end. So Answer is kind of interesting to me. I thought that, a lot of people sort of forgot about him after that terrible round on Friday, but he really came back strong on the weekend. So those are just a few, kind of obvious things that stuck out to me. And I'm going to, definitely going to look at this past week when it comes to the form of these guys. This course that they played last week, TPC South Wind, was incredibly difficult. Now, there's not as much hazard as far as water off the tee at TPC Harding Park, but there is an emphasis on hitting it in the fairway, just like we saw last week, and a few other similarities, and just a very difficult course. So, and you saw the cream rise to the top, which is I think you're going to see again this week.
Pat, I don't know. Your hair looks extra fresh today. Like, did you just get out of the shower for this? Because you look like a mob boss who just broke somebody's leg with a pipe or something.
I actually did just get out of the shower. So,
okay. Yeah. I mean, I think along those lines, you hit most of it. I think Daniel Berger getting another top 5, which is 6 out of his last 7 tournaments. Your boy, who we were sweating at 225 to 1, Tom Lewis, who you talked up, could have been right there and just kind of farted all over himself on the last few holes, but he shot a 61 on Saturday. And then another guy who finished T2, who I talked up, Phil Mickelson, and got him a little T2. Your boy Jason Day continued to play well despite me making fun of his back issues. That was an interesting, an interesting top 10 there for sure. Paul Casey continued to suck, which I told you would probably happen. And like I said, Chalk Bomb Ben nailed Victor Hovland, finishing 59th. Victor's played, I think this week will be his 8th out of 9 straight events. 8 out of 9 events. He took the 3M off. So my man's been playing a lot of golf. Anyway, it was an interesting week, WGC, but it is time to move on. We're going to spend a good bit of time this week really diving deep and going into these players and these names. Pat, talk to us about TPC Harding Park and what you think it's going to take to play well. And I'm going to chime in with maybe anything you may have missed and what I think is going to take to play well. We'll see if they line up. How about that?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, in here, we're playing basically a course that we don't see a whole lot, so I'm going to dive into it a little more than I might normally do. But yes, we are at TPC Harding Park in San Francisco, California. It is a public course just along the beautiful Lake Merced and just inland from the Pacific coast. It is a par 70. It is playing 7,234 yards, but it can play as much as 7,400 yards, depending on where they put the tee boxes on each day. You got bent grass greens. They probably got a little Poe in there as they've been, they were planted back in 2014, and that's sort of a prevalent grass, but I think they're going to putt like bent. We'll see maybe later in the week if we get some caddy information in the Nut Hut. They're fairly large by tour standards as far as the greens are concerned. There's not a lot of slope, but I bet they're going to be running extremely quick. I think the PGA is going to get them as fast as they possibly can, especially since they don't have a lot of slope. We got 156 player field this week. Top 70 in ties make the cut. Top 70,
big deal.
Which is not what we've seen. The PGA has said, we're screw the PGA Tour. We're going to top 70.
Yeah.
You got 95 of the top 100 players in the world scheduled to tee it up here at Harding Park. So it is a definite stacked field. 7 par 4s longer than 460 yards. I think that's important to look at. We looked at that last week. We had the same thing. 8 holes on that par 70 were playing between 450 to 500 yards. You also got 2 potentially drivable par 4s in 7 and 16. So some of your more aggressive players might be able to drive those greens, especially like Bryson, who's just been bombing off the tee and is as aggressive as ever.
I don't think one of them's all that drivable when you look at it. I don't think it will. I can't remember which one, if it's either 7 or 16. There's one of them that there's there's just too much trouble right there. I don't see him trying it, but definitely could go super deep down there and have a little, half pitch shot in. But
Yeah.
shorter par fours, very scoreable.
Both par fives are over 560 yards, so you'll see some of the longer guys be able to hit those into. Other than the rough, which I think is going to be very penal, you got dense sort of cypress trees, along the fairways. There's not a whole lot of trouble though off the tee, really, other than the rough and the bunkers. They've got these bunkers pretty strategically placed where these guys are going to have to take them into account. They're not just going to always be able to just bomb them over them. So I think that's important. The rough, by the way, is Kentucky bluegrass with some rye. What else do I got here? I think that these guys are really just going to have to be very strategic off the tee. You can't just cowboy it up around this place. I mean, you can't just say, I'm going to have one strategy and I'm bomb it and do whatever. I just don't think you can do that here. You got to be pretty accurate. The fairways are pretty narrow. So I think that is important. If I could choose a golfer that was the perfect golfer for this course, it would be, hey, you can hit it very long and you hit it very straight. Now, that combination doesn't always come together, but if that's what I was going to do, that's what I would look for. But all said and done, I think it's going to be a very tough track. I think scoring is going to be tough to come by. Weather looks pretty perfect, definitely going to be cooler than what they've seen the last few weeks, especially in Memphis. You look at where, maybe some, the times they have played this course in the past. We saw them play the 2015 WGC match play here where Rory won. We saw the 2009 President's Cup was played at Harding Park. Tiger had the most points, by the way, that week. And then 2005, the WGC American Express. Tiger also won here on this course in that tournament. Past champions, we had Brooks winning 2 years in a row in 19 and 18. We had JT in 2017, Jimmy Walker in 16, and Jason Day in 2015. Real quick, just to talk, some of the stats I looked at. I definitely looked at driving accuracy. I do think distance matters. I looked at, your good ball strikers. And again, like last week, that par 4 scoring stat between 450 and 500 yards. I think that might be just sort of an outlier to look at as well. So there you go. I'm almost out of breath, DB. And I would say this. I'll add this. With the weather conditions there, it is nice and the weather's supposed to be good, but if you get some dense fog that tends to come in there, that can weigh down the ball a little bit. So that might hurt some of these guys that have a little bit more distance, just depending on what it's like day to day. I don't know how much you factor that in without knowing too much until Wednesday. Yeah, but it is something to look out for. The ball does not travel as far if we get those kind of conditions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to travel that far either. Anyway, I mean, you're at sea level, so the ball's not going to go as far. I'm not sure you mentioned this, but this was previously hosted 2 WGC events, 2005 and 2015, as well as a President's Cup in 2009. So there is some player.
I already mentioned that.
Oh, good. Okay.
I just went through all that.
There's some player commentary out there that talks about, how this course kind of played, how the ball doesn't fly here. And how it can play lengthy, and they've lengthened it since then. So, one of those par 5s is reachable. The other one, maybe Bryson will get to, or if they really move up the tee boxes one day, they can get to it. But one of them's over 600 yards. And you mentioned those long par 4s. I think that's key. It's been very documented already that they've really narrowed in and squeezed in these fairways. I want to say I saw something, the average fairway width out here at Harding Park was around 22 to 23 yards, which is very narrow. Your average tour event's 30. So it's definitely getting tighter off the tee this week. I kind of think when you look at the layout of this course, there's, like you mentioned, there's not a lot of water. There's not a whole lot of trouble. I mean, there's sand traps. There's rough, which everybody's talking about could be gnarly, which we'll definitely hear a lot more about. We've got probably, more than a half a dozen caddies who are arriving right now as we speak. We just got a photo from one getting off the plane. So we've got a half a dozen caddies or so arriving, a bunch of players that we can talk to. We'll know a lot more come Wednesday night for the Nut Hut members. We'll have a lot more information there. But other than the rough, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of stuff here. And you can really, really miss it well left or right and be in an opposite fairway and just hit it over the cypress trees. This is a municipal golf course. This is a TPC track, which normally plays easier. The layout is normally easier by nature, just being a TPC and being a muni. The only way they can make it defensible is doing what they've done by tightening the fairways, lengthening the rough. You mentioned the greens are pretty big. They're not that, they're not small greens, so they're easier to hit. They're not super fast, and there's not a ton of undulation because it's primarily bent grass, and you just can't have all that undulation unless you're Augusta National and you tear them up every summer. So, I do think that there are going to be some players, and I think Bryson's one of them, who are going to try and overpower the golf course because I think he could just on a number of holes blow driver, and if he's in the rough, he'd rather have a wedge out of the rough than a 6-iron out of the fairway, or if he really loses it, he can hit it in the other fairway, and just hit out of that. Seriously, I looked at this.
That's a strategy we don't hear too much on the show. Well, if he really loses it, he's just going to be able to hit it from the other fairway.
Listen, this is how DB plays golf, man. Like if I, for example, there's a hole here, there's a course here locally that I always play really well because I can play from the opposite fairways, and so you can have that miss. You can aim it. Hell, a lot of times I'll aim at the tree line, and I likely ain't going to hit it straight. So if I hit it left, I'm in my fairway, and if I hit it right, I'm in the other fairway. So I don't know.
Well,
I'm not saying...
The only thing is I think these, from what I've read, and here again, we haven't seen this course all that much, is these cypress trees that are along the fairways can like gobble balls up. Like they're very.
Do you see how high Bryson's hitting the golf ball right now?
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean for Bryson, maybe, but.
Yeah, I said there's a handful. I think there's a handful of guys who are going to try and maybe overpower it more than some. Regardless of all of that, at the end of the day, length matters here. It is going to matter. I don't want a ton of short players. If I'm going to play a short player, I want him to be in excellent form coming in. I don't want him trying to knock the rust off. I want good form, a good price, and a good pedigree in majors and tough tournaments. I just don't. I think considering you're at sea level, you talked about the fact that the air can just be heavier here. The ball's not going to travel. They're going to have longer irons into these greens. And also, too, you could argue with the fairways being, shrinking in like that. I mean, even the short knockers aren't going to always be in the fairway. So if a lot more people are going to be in the rough, I'd rather the longer players be hitting out of the rough than the shorter players be hitting out of the rough.
Yeah, I agree there. And I'll add this. I mean, just as kind of another little, and I know you hate this, but you just mentioned that, you're going to have some longer iron shots into these greens. I think if you are looking at, where I'm going with this.
Yes,
I think if you're trying to look at players and maybe you just want to decide between a few, I don't mind looking at proximity 175 to 200 yards out. I just don't. Large greens, you're going to have to, look. I just think it's something to pay attention to. You might hear me mention it a few times. Fair warning.
I didn't mean to say this. This is unrelated. With the WGC match play event, I just don't think it's worth looking back at that. I mean, there's guys that I guess you could say, oh, they played here in a competitive event before. But when you're playing match play, the way that you attack the golf course is so much different. Like I would say these players are more focused on competing against the other player more so than they are the golf course. Whereas this week, they're going to be thinking about beating the golf course. They're going to play the golf course, right? Whereas in match play, it's just a totally different approach. I only mentioned that as just saying that that was another time they played this course. I wasn't saying that I'm looking at it as some sort of
that. Just because
but other people will be contacting us going, well, what about so-and-so who made it to the semifinals or what? I just don't think that's as relevant. I think that's too much noise. All right. So in terms of stats for me, I'm looking at strokes gained off the tee, which obviously takes into account distance and accuracy. Strokes gained approach, obviously, I think Data Golf showed that distance and strokes gained approach were the two biggest indicators on this golf course. So you got to hit your irons well into these greens for sure. I think par 4 scoring, as you mentioned, par 70, ownership in terms of DFS is going to matter. And, you mentioned it, top 70 in ties. That means that worst case scenario, 156 players in this field, okay? If exactly 70 tie, then worst case scenario, 61% of this field is going to make the cut. It's probably going to be more than that. You can go ahead and eliminate about 40 players.
The PGA professionals.
And
And
I kind of went through the field and eliminated more than just them. I did eliminate the PGA professionals, but I also eliminated a handful of other names that I just don't think have a chance to make the cut. So I came up with a number of 115 players that I think could like have a chance to make the cut. 115. So now you've taken this field from 156 to 115, and you're going to get top 70 in ties are going to make the cut. You're going to have in DFS, you're going to have a lot of 6-6 lineups this week. This is not going to be like the carnage we've seen in weeks past since the restart. There's going to be a lot more a higher percentage of 6-6. That's very, very critical. A lot like last week with the WGC in terms of ownership, though, because you've got so many huge names and big names and it's such a deep field. I do think ownership will be diluted and spread out as we saw at the WGC. You're not going to have anybody that's like 25, 30% owned. Like we normally see. So in terms of DFS, I think you can, pay attention to ownership, make sure that your lineup does have a couple of guys, 2 or 3 that give you a significant amount of leverage, especially if you're playing in some of these big contests that are offered over on DraftKings. You need leverage, but I'm just saying if you're going to eat the chalk this week, I'm doing air quotes, if you're going to eat the chalk in DFS, what that means is you're really eating like 20% guys or 22% guys or 23% guys or 18% guys, which isn't super, super chalky, right? Like we definitely see it a lot higher than that. But make sure you got some guys on your roster that are 5%, 6%, 4%. Make sure you got some of that in there too, so that you can differentiate your lineups. And then in terms of, I think another important thing is when you look back at PGA championships over the years, incoming form has definitely been an indicator, and a lot of times it can be for majors, but having guys who have played recently and played very well, I think the stat is like top 30s. There's only been like 2 players that haven't had a top 30 finish in the previous start since like 2000. And then also only like 2 or 3 players in the last since 2000 that have not had a win in that season or that calendar year. So obviously this season's been weird with COVID, but I think form is very, very critical here. I'm not going to be jumping on guys that just, and I think I'm going to get cute with them and surprise everyone. I don't think that matters. Like, let's not get too cute with that. Let's get guys who are in form and can show up and play. How's that sound? We ready?
Sounds good. Yeah. I'm ready.
All of our data, all of our stats are coming to you courtesy Fantasy National. That is where we go. That's where we've gone for going on 4 years now for all of our golf stats, because the PGA Tour website sucks for golf stats. If you want great golf stats and golf stats only, fantasynational.com/TJ, or you can use promo code Tour Junkies when you check out, is the way to go. They offer subscriptions weekly, monthly, or annually. If you want to join, you can even join this week to try it out. And if you go, man, this is awesome, then you can sign up for a month or a year and you still get the 20% off discount because the Tour Junkies sent you. They have lineup optimizers for DFS, ownership projections for DFS. But yeah, you can dig into all the players, all the stats you could think of, even proprietary stats that only Fantasy National has. Again, we've been using them for 3.5 years. They are the best. Check them out, fantasynational.com/TJ. So when you hear us reference where these guys stand in a certain stat category or recent form or whatever, we pull all of that from Fantasy National. We only have to go to one place, which is fantastic. For course history, for recent form, for stats, it all goes to fantasynational.com/TJ. So there we go. Let's get into it, buddy. You ready?
Yeah, I am very ready. Let's go.
Let's start the DFS portion tonight in the 9K and above range on DraftKings. We are going to talk through the ranges. Now, again, this is early Monday, okay? Very early Monday. We're trying to plant our flags in some players early. A lot of things change between early Monday and like late Wednesday night or early Thursday morning, since it's a Pacific Coast event. You and I, Pat, being here on the East Coast, get some extra time in the morning to I almost said tinkle, but I mean tinker.
Tinkle a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And tinkle.
I always do tinkle in the morning.
Yeah.
I think that sucks about getting old, man. Like, no matter when I stop drinking, like if the last drink I had today was this vodka drink at like, I wrapped it up at like 3:00. Without fail, at 4 a.m., my body would find some liquid to vacate, and I'd have to get up in the 4 a.m. in the morning and go take a piss.
Same way for me. Mine's like 5:30 though. So you're a little earlier than me.
God, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll have a few extra hours to tinker and tinkle, but a lot will change. So, we're going to do our best here to kind of guess on who's going to be popular, who's going to be not. There's definitely some ranges here. To me, the 9K and above and the 8K range, I feel pretty strong about. I don't feel like it's going to change a whole lot for me. The 7K range is where I feel like I could give you a dozen names, but that it's the biggest range, so it could happen. Let's start at the 9K and above. So we got Dustin Johnson all the way up to Justin Thomas, who is our highest price player at 11.3. A little softer pricing this week, as we usually see on DK with major championships. A lot of new money, a lot of public money, a lot of people that don't play a lot of PGA Tour DFS are flooding in, and they tend to soften up the prices. Plus, it's just an incredible field, so the price is soft. So JT coming in 11.3 feels like a little bit of a bargain. And I will start with JT. That is who I'm going with at 11.3, coming off the victory. I just love JT at this golf course from a tee to green standpoint. Now, he did scare me a little bit as he started to leak oil there coming down the stretch. But I feel like I don't think anybody's irons right now in the game of golf, both in the short-term recent form since the restart or the long-term last year to 2 years. I don't think anyone's irons are better than Justin Thomas. And I love that. I love that on a major championship golf course where we know you got to hit greens and you got to give yourself birdie-making opportunities. We know JT can play excellent on tough golf courses if the rough is in fact up and this place is brutal or the wind gets to blowing. He can do that, as we've seen him do at Oakmont and other majors throughout the years. But we also know that if it plays a little easier, which PGA Championships historically do, and the winning score here is 15 under to 18 under, we know he can keep up there too. I love the form, as I mentioned. So I think JT is a no-brainer for me, and the salary is plenty soft enough for me to be able to fit him into a lineup. So I'll roll with JT. Then I'm going to drop down to Xander Schauffele. $10,000 Xander Schauffele, another superb iron player of late since the restart. Xander is freaking killing it. He is first in this field in greens and regulation since the restart, third in strokes gained off the tee, fifth in par 4 scoring between 450 and 500 yards. We just saw him get a sixth at the WGC St. Jude. He's a California boy. I kind of like a little California edge this week. There's something to playing on the West Coast and being familiar and like understanding those surfaces out there. So I kind of will give a little lean towards some California homers. Don't mind that whatsoever. And then finally, if I have to plant my flag on one more player for tournaments, I am going to go with Patrick Cantley. Another California kid. I was on him last week at the WGC. He sucked the first 2 days, absolutely sucked, but came back with a vengeance and had a pretty good weekend en route to a T35. Cantley's a ball striker. If this place gets windy, he's incredible. If it still, like I said, stays rather benign and plays easy, he's still incredible. He putts best on bent grass. When you look over the last 100 rounds on the PGA Tour, his best putting surface by far is bent grass greens. I mentioned a California kid. And when you look at last week and what he did, what he did last week, he didn't gain the normal strokes off the tee that he usually does. He was dead zero in strokes gained. Whereas since the restart, he's gained a half a stroke, 3 strokes, and 3 strokes, and then 0. So it really just sucked off the tee. Now, his irons were still extremely solid, gained almost 3 strokes on approach, and he just didn't putt that great. So all in all, I'm not too scared about Cantley. In fact, I hope a few people jump off of him as a result of the poor or kind of middling finish that he had at T35. Now, another player that I like in tournaments, but I'm going to list him as my cash play. So if you're playing 50-50s or double ups or head-to-heads, and you want to play a cash game, we recommend you typically, just focus on getting 6 players through the cut, regardless of ownership. Don't try to be cute. Just put the 6 strongest golfers that you think can make the cut in a lineup. And I will start with Webb Simpson there in this 9K and above range. I love Webb here, just from, a guy who is very accurate, a guy who can hit his long irons really well because he's going to have some long irons into these greens for sure. Coming off the T12 at the St. Jude, where he felt like he kind of backdoored into that. He won the RBC Heritage a couple weeks ago. So I'll go with Webb in cash. And finally, my fade is going to be Tiger. It's major championship week, which means he's going to be a little extra popular, but it's really not about that. It's really about the highs here are 65 degrees. He's going to, if he tees off in the morning, he's going to be teeing off in the 50s. And I just don't know that I want to back, Tiger's back. I don't want to back his back in this weather, in these, in those conditions. I think if I got to plant my flag and fade a guy, I'll fade the public Tiger and his aching back in cooler weather. He's talked about it though. Like this is not grandpa's knee hurting because he feels like it's about to start raining. Like Tiger has talked about the fact that in cooler weather, he struggles to get the back loosened up. So I think for that reason, I'll be out. There's a lot of great names here in the 9K and above. So it is tough to fade one, but if I got to, there's the one.
Okay, wow, this is going to be interesting. So there's some agreement and there's some disagreement here. So I will. I'm going to start though with a guy you didn't mention who I do love this week, and that is Jon Rahm at 10-5. I am not going to pay as much attention to what we saw last week. He did not play well. If you look at it across the board, he really was. He basically lost strokes in almost every single major category, other than off the tee and putting. I think it was just sort of an off week for John because we've seen him play incredibly well. We just saw him win at the Memorial in a very difficult course. I like him this week. You look at stats, he's definitely a great ball striker. He's 5th in the field off the tee. He's 21st in driving distance. So, and then he's also, he's fairly accurate. He's 32nd in the field in fairways gained. So this is kind of one of those guys that has the driving distance, the accuracy, all that kind of stuff. I think Jon Rahm is primed to win his first major. I love him this week at 10-5, so I will be all over him. I am in agreement with you on Xander. So Xander was actually my cash play. I can see you playing him in tournaments and whatever else, but I just
interchangeable
love him.
There.
Yeah, I just think he's a great, solid cash play, and I think he can easily win this tournament too. So I like him in cash. Cantley was my other GPP play. I was sort of surprised. I thought you might be in disagreement with me on him. And for all the same reasons that you said, great putter on bent, checks the box off the tee, ball striking, distance. I think his ownership might be a little bit lower this week. Like you said, I think there's a chance of that. So Cantley was one of my other GPP plays.
And I did forget to mention, we did find out after the fact, like it was like Thursday or Friday. It was Thursday night or Friday. Someone on the ground at WGC told us that Cantley was not feeling well or something. He had not been feeling well.
Yeah, but it wasn't the COVID, apparently.
But it wasn't COVID, but he hadn't been feeling well, which may have led to the rough start. But it looks like he either started feeling better or he just powered through it because the weekend was much stronger.
Yeah,
something
agree there. So my last GPP play was actually Tiger at 9,200. I like him this week. Look, nobody can, he's sort of one of those players that's hard to peg because we haven't seen him all that much. He didn't play great. He barely made it into the weekend at the Memorial. But we know he's just a fantastic ball striker. We've seen him have success on this course before. Now it was many moons and backs ago for Tiger. But I still think that he can have a good week. I want to see. I'm interested to see where his ownership comes in because he was like 20% in tournaments at the Memorial, which I thought was way higher than I thought it would be. I think it's going to be a lot less this week. We'll see.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be interesting. If I'm seeing a 20% Tiger, I probably would come in the Nut Hut on a Wednesday and say, you know what? We always get that question in the Nut Hut, by the way, like who's the guy you talked about on the podcast that you were on, but you were now off? I could see me because of ownership. And I know we talk about the public money and all that kind of stuff with Tiger. We'll want to look at that, but I still like him. I still think that, despite the weather and whatever else, we've seen him hitting the ball great all year long. So I'm in on Tiger at 9,200. I like the price too. My fade is going to be Bryson. I know you talked him up a little bit early on. I think he's going to be too aggressive this week. He's going to be bombing all over the place, but not in the right spots. We've seen him just
all over the place,
having all these blow up holes. Like he's going along fine, and then Bryson's going to Bryson, and then do something and he's worried about ants and everything else out there. And the thing with Bryson is this.
Oh,
he is like, he's very streaky. We've seen that throughout his career so far. Like, he was playing great at the restart. We all saw that, but then he missed a cut and then he didn't play all that great last week. So I'm kind of in that camp right now that Bryson's on the he's on the backside of a good streak, and he hasn't really played that well the last few weeks. So I'm not in on Bryson this week. I'm just I'm not.
By the way, I mean, props to us, Pat. I'm going to go ahead and take the victory lap here for finally getting Bryson to block us on Instagram. I'm very proud of that trophy.
Yes.
For those of you on YouTube, you can see the proof on Instagram here. He has officially blocked us because
he still allows us on Twitter.
Yeah, he
still
follows us on Twitter, but yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. Man, I just can't, Now, here's the thing. I absolutely have not been afraid, despite hating his guts. I've not been afraid to play him. I mean, I've been playing him regularly since the restart. So it's not one of these things where I can't stand him and I'm gonna tell you not to play him just because I can't stand him. That's not it at all. I can't stand him.
That wouldn't be smart.
No, it would not be smart. But I mean, if you look at the trend here, so he came out with the restart. The concern is his iron play. Obviously, strokes gained off the tee, he's killing it, and putting, he's killing it. But the concern is his iron play is trending in a very negative direction.
He started off hitting more fairways. Everybody was talking about that, right? Early on, they were saying, hey, not only is he bombing it, but he's hitting fairways. Well, not as much now. I mean, he's 98th in the field in driving accuracy.
Yeah. At the Charles Schwab, he gained 5 strokes on approach. At the RBC, he gained 6. Okay, he finished 3rd and 8th. Then at the Travelers, he went from gaining 5 and 6 strokes on approach to gaining 0.7. Okay, and he still finished 6th. But then at the Rocket Mortgage, which funny enough, he won. He lost a half a stroke with his irons, but he gained 7 off the tee and 8 putting. Okay, so then at the Memorial, he lost over 6 shots on approach and missed the cut. And then last week, he lost over 7 shots on approach and finished 30th despite 10 strokes gained with the putter. Now, I do think Bryson has, something that's not been talked a lot about is I think the way that he's putting right now is actually really, really smart. Like his whole arm lock and it looks terrible, but he may have broken the code there too a little bit. I mean, putting is definitely a lot of feel and you got to read the greens, all that stuff. But in terms of like variability of the stroke, I think he's kind of cracked the code there too. And I think he's going to continue to putt well. I don't think 8 strokes gained, 7 strokes gained putting weeks every now and then are going to be crazy for Bryson. But the concern is definitely the irons and the wedge play is not adding up. So for that reason, I think I'm out if I got to do the Shark Tank deal. I mean, I think Bryson, I would agree with you there on the fade for Bryson, but I do think I think he's gonna double down on his strengths this week, and he's gonna I feel like his strategy is gonna be attack and give me the shortest club. Well, you can't say shortest club because all his clubs are the fucking same length because he's a dickhole. But give me the most lofted club in my bag, right? Or whatever the hell he says. Give me the most lofted club in my bag from the rough, and I'll take my chances. I think that's what he's going to try to do. And if he does, it scares me a little bit to fade him because
I could see that.
It scares me a little bit.
Do we know what the ant situation is out there? I mean, are there a lot of ants?
Yeah.
I mean,
is this a popular season for the ants? Are the grasshoppers out? Because if grasshoppers are out right now, the ants are all afraid. We know that from the Disney movie, the Pixar movie. So if there's a grasshopper infestation at the moment, then that means less ants, which means Bryson's probably okay. So we need to check in on that.
Yeah,
all right, let's move to the 8K range. Which will be Daniel Berger kicking it off at 8,800, no 8,900 player this week, all the way down to Patrick Reed and Terrell Hatton, both at 8K. Pat, I'll let you get it going on this one. 2 tournament plays and a cash play as well as a fade. But before you do, actually, Pat, I'm going to actually interrupt you there. I got to talk about something, buddy. I'm going to show the viewers on YouTube something scary right now. I'm going to show them my new undies. My new undies. right there. See it? It says chill the boys. Chill
Oh
boys.
gosh. You know
Our
what? I'm wearing
friends-
mine. I'm wearing mine as well, but I'm
Are
going to
you-
save the audience that views us on YouTube of any sort of visual of that.
Our friends at Chill Boys have sent us some amazing underwear. I am wearing currently the bamboo boxer briefs. That's right. I said bamboo. And these things, my favorite part of it is the anti-chafing zone, which is coming in handy as I sit on this wooden podcast chair in my hot freaking attic or bonus room, which I know yours is too. The anti-chafing zone is critical. It may be what Bryson needs to maybe get himself in a better mood. But if you're like us, you don't like playing golf or even talking about golf in hot, sticky clothes. It can be a distraction. So our friends at Chill Boys, have come up with a solution. They are a Minnesota-based company making lovely, lightweight, breathable underwear for any weather circumstance, any circumstance. And they sent us a whole thing of these, and they're so freaking nice. I threw away a bunch of my old stuff just for this. But imagine if you could play around a golf on a humid 90-degree day without sweating your nuts off, and take care of the boys. Picture yourself in that hot, humid day, not worrying about sweating through your shorts and keeping your balls nice and comfy, So I'm really proud to have the Chill Boys on board. They are a great bunch of guys. We've talked to them on a Zoom call. They were very nice. And yeah, Minnesota based, love golf, love the show, and said, you know what, your listeners need to know how to chill the boys. So, hey, listeners, do us a favor. Go check out our friends, Chill Boys. Go to chillboys.com to see the full line of cool, soft boxers and boxer briefs, and use code Tour Junkies to save 15%, not a measly 10. We're talking about
15. That's pretty good. That's one of the highest percent discounts we've seen on some of these deals.
Yeah, you can get 15% off your first order. Anything you order, you could order all kinds of stuff. Anything you order, 15% off. And again, all you got to do is go to chillboys.com and use code Tour Junkies. Save that 15% off, man. These things are now the bamboo I learned is just naturally cooler and softer than cotton. And I can tell you personally, because you boys on YouTube just saw my undies, it is true. It is true.
Yeah. I'm wearing the cool ones or whatever they call it, not the bamboo ones, but the other cooling boxers, and they are quite comfortable.
Very nice. We appreciate the Chill Boys for helping us out. Now, let's get to the 8K range on DraftKings. Where are you going to start?
I am starting right there at the top with my boy Daniel Berger. Been on him all year, and I'm still going to stay with him. I mean, the guy's just playing incredible golf. You know, you look at his ball striking. He's 12th in the field. He's top 15 in the field in driving accuracy. I talked about that stat of par 4 scoring from 450 to 500 yards. He is number 4 in the field in that stat category, and also 8th in strokes gained approach. You can't argue with the form. I think that he is probably one I'm going to be eating a little bit of chalk with. I would imagine there's going to be some ownership there on Daniel Berger, but I do not care. I love him this week, and we'll play him at 8,800. I'm a big fan of this whole range, really, by the way. There's a lot of guys in here I actually like. I think you're probably a little different, but I'm going also back to Jason Day at 8,400. 3 straight top 10 finishes. The guy is just he's playing good golf right now. You cannot argue. I mean, there's no argument there. I mean, the guy's playing.
I can't argue. No, I will not argue.
I mean, he's playing good golf. I mean, the back's always an issue. We know that. But we have consistently seen super low ownership on him. I think he was like 6% owned last week. And I think you'll probably get it again as well. He was 6% in GPPs at the WGC, and he's been consistently under 10%. I like some Jason Day there at 8,400. He will be one of my tournament plays. My cash play, who I could also play in tournaments as well. It's kind of like Xander up in the 9K range, is Morikawa at 8,600. Another just fantastic ball striker. Seen him in pretty good recent form lately with the win and whatever else. I mean, just across the board. I mean, the guy is incredible. About the only stat where you really don't see him pop is driving distance. But
yeah, he's not really super long.
I'm not really that concerned there with him for Collins. So I like him.
He's not short. He's not short.
He's not short. He's just not.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of middle of the pack when you look at his driving distance numbers. And then my fade is going to be a guy that I've been loving on. I've been loving on him. I've been stroking his head. That is Terrell Hatton at 8,000. I am going to fade him this week. I know we've had some good form from him. I feel like that, at that price at 8,000, I thought he might be a little bit more expensive, but he didn't have a great week last week. Not very accurate off the tee. Doesn't check the box in driving distance. Doesn't check the box off the tee. Where he's really been making hay is on some of the shorter courses on his, with his approach game and everything else, which I do think is important out here. But I'm just not a big fan of Hatton. So I will be fading him at 8,000. So there you go. That is my 8K range. And I was interested because I don't know if there's like chat things flying through here that I'm not looking at, but like I just get these like the YouTube version smirks from DB. So I'm wondering like what the hell's going on the whole entire time.
I got to say, I've never felt more like a stripper in my 36 adult years because we a YouTube viewer and longtime listener, Marcus Miklovich, has sent us a super chat for $1.99 because I showed my underwear. So I'm getting.
You getting dollar bills thrown at you?
I'm getting dollar bills. I'm getting dollar bills. I feel special right now. I feel a little tingly in my middle, a little tingly in the middle.
It would be Marcus that would do that.
It would totally be Marcus. Yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me that it was Marcus. I mean, he's a California guy. They're all a little, you know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, I feel a little weird. But hey, I'll take the $1.99. I'm not going to turn it down. I will take the $1.99. So that was what was going on. I don't even remember who you picked. I know you said you stroked.
What do you think I would have gotten if I had actually decided to show mine? Like, would I have probably gotten like a negative?
Only one way to find out, champ. Only one way to find out. All I heard was you stroked Terrell Hatton's head, and he hadn't been playing well. So maybe you should stop.
No, he's been playing well, but not last week, and I just don't like him. He was my favorite.
Okay.
So.
Okay. It's really hard to ignore Berger in this range. I feel like he may be one of the most popular. I think he's going to be top. I bet he's top 3 or 4 owned because people are going to play him. Even if they go like studs and duds, they're going to play him. And if they fade the top and go way balanced, they're going to play him. The form is just impeccable. And the greens and regulation, the approach play, I mean, everything just checks. So I feel like he's going to be super chalk. For that reason, I put him as my cash play. And I think what may happen is Morikawa may go a little under the radar. Maybe not. Maybe I'm completely missing the boat here.
Maybe flip those two.
I kind of like playing Morikawa. I mean, I had him written down anyway. I bet him a couple weeks ago for the PGA at Harding Park. He's familiar at this place. He's played here. He's on record talking about how he's rather familiar with Harding Park. He's obviously a California kid as well. 7th in the field in strokes gained approach, 9th in greens and regulation, 12th in strokes gained off the tee since the restart. You mentioned it, just won a few weeks ago. I think Morikawa at 8,600 is a steal. But either Berger or Morikawa, I love them. And I think either one of them I would play regardless of ownership. I will. That is chalk that I would eat in that range. Now, a guy that I do think I may get a little bit of leverage with, and hopefully, dear God, some winning upside would be Hideki Matsuyama.
I knew it.
I'm going to try Hideki. I haven't played a lot of Hideki since the restart. I really tend to be one that picks my spots with Hideki. But at $8,200, coming off a T20 at the WGC, okay, not bad. 11th in approach, 14th in greens and regulation since the restart. He's had some trouble off the tee. I'm hoping that gets worked out. Now, we know Hideki is a god-awful putter. Now, we are coming off of Bermuda, which he is off the charts piss poor in putting on Bermuda. We're getting away from that. His 2 best services are POA and bent. So thank God. That's what we're coming to this week. And his iron play is still very solid since the restart. He's only had 1 week where his irons have sucked, but he's gained 3, 5.5, 5, all since the restart. He just needs to hit a few more fairways and just a couple more fairways, and I think he's fine. But long-term form, hitting fairways and greens is not a problem for Hideki. These are not super difficult greens. They are a little larger, so maybe you have to worry about some 3-putts with Hideki. But I don't feel like he's going to be real chalky. And I think I could get some leverage and potentially winning upside at a guy who's competed in a ton of majors, ton of WGCs and big events, and he's in good form. So I think Hideki's my guy. I'm going to fade Patrick Reed. I'm going to fade him. I don't mind playing Hatton. I'm not going to freak out over the 69th place finish at WGC, but I don't like where Reed is at right now because unlike Hatton, his iron play has been really, really bad. He's just saved everything with his scrambling, which you can do. But his iron play has been awful. 92nd in approach, 95th in greens and reg since the restart. I think I'll pass. So there's the 8K range.
Okay.
Ready to move on to this monstrous 7K range, Patrick?
Yes. Gosh.
What are you doing here? I don't know what to do here. I got to be honest. Like I'm all over the place here. I got a lot of names, lots of names written down.
I'm kind of the same. I'm a little all over the place, but if you want me to start, I will. And I am going to start. I'm going to start in the middle range here. And this is a guy that you liked last week. And we've seen him. We saw him play okay last week with a T35, but he's definitely a guy that I think can play this course really well. And that is Sergio Garcia at 7,600. I'm a big fan of his this week. I think ownership will probably still be low on him. You look at the stats, though. He is second in the field off the tee. He's 8th in scrambling, 14th in driving distance. That may actually surprise you. 23rd in that par 4 scoring stat from 450 to 500 yards. The biggest part with him is we always talk about, and he is checking the box in ball striking, but on strokes gained approach, he actually hasn't been as good. So, I think that's been kind of where his issues has come up. But I do like Sergio at 7,600, so I will play him as a tournament play. My cash play, I mentioned, I'll go back to some of my tournament plays though, is Abraham Answer at 7,700. I just think he's a great cash play. Checks all the boxes from a stat category, from a stat standpoint. I mentioned the fact that outside of that one bad round last week, he played incredibly well. He continues to do that. He's in good form. So I think Answer is a very good play there at 7,700. Another guy that I really like down below in the low 7K range is Harris English. Harris English is just one of those guys that just kind of plods along. He's never, I don't know if you got a ton of win equity out of him, but he is just a solid golfer. And you look at his last couple of events, he was 18th at the 3M. He was T13 at the Memorial. As far as the stats are concerned for Harris, I mean, he's a great scrambler, hits the ball in the fairway. He's pretty good with his approach game. He's in the top third in the field as far as strokes gained approach and ball striking. So I think at 7,200, you can't really, he's a good guy to get on right down there if you need a little bit cheaper guy here in the 7K range. So I like Harris English. And then my last tournament play is a guy we haven't seen at all. And I keep gambling on this, and it has not really paid off. But I'm going to go with Adam Scott at 7,800, a guy that I still think has a great game for this course. He's going to be low owned for sure. I like the price at 7,800, so I will play him in tournaments. And you know who my fade's going to be? And I don't even know. This is like I'm kind of like you. There's several guys I think I could fade, but this is a guy I'm wondering about where the ownership's going to be just because he's right there in the middle of this range, and that is Matt Kutcher at 7,500. Just doesn't excite me all that much. We haven't seen him really contend at all.
He doesn't feel like backdoor top 10 Kutcher anymore. He feels like he's kind of lost it. Like a couple years ago, last year, he was this backdoor top 10 machine. His last top 10 was the Genesis. Before that, you have to go all the way back to the Canadian Open in June.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel the same since really the beginning of 2020. It just hasn't felt the same.
Yeah, and I don't know. And it's not. He's not been. You look at ownership; it hasn't been incredibly high over the last few weeks. But I don't know. I think a lot of people, especially when you get newer players on some of these bigger weeks like this, you're going to look at a guy like Matt Kutcher at 7,500 and just be all over it. I'm not a fan. So he will be my fade in the 7K range. So there you go. DB, It's
All
your
right.
turn now.
I'll start with, I'm surprised by a couple of the names here. I like it. I like it. I'm going to start with my fade, and it's going to be Justin Rose. Don't like the form. Three missed cuts most recently. Now, he did come out pretty hot on the restart with a 3rd and a 14th at the RBC Heritage. It does feel like a good price, but when you look at the stats, it's not good. The stats are not good at all. He's changed his equipment, which we know, and I think that'll benefit him, but he's still going through it. He's also changed his coach. I just think there's a lot of variability going on with Justin Rose. Now, he's a name. He's a major winner. There's for sure upside. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Like if we get 4% projected Justin Rose come Thursday morning when you're tinkling and tinkering, then maybe that's one to jump on. But I feel like if I'm going to, I thought the easy route would actually be a guy you named, which is Adam Scott, because I've just made I've made a living since the restart fading guys making their first start. But I don't want to do that. I think it's Rose. My cash play and tournament play and whatever you want to do with him is the same as yours, Abraham Answer. Abe just doesn't make a ton of mistakes, which bodes well for a guy at $7,700 that you need to make a cut. You need to have some upside. He just doesn't make mistakes. His greens and regulation numbers are off the charts. And he's playing with a lot of confidence right now, I think. And the form is as good as you need it to be coming into a PGA Championship. It's interesting that you mentioned Sergio. I actually had him written down. I'm going to go, since this is the Monday show, I'm going to try to give you some guys who I think are a little off the radar a little bit. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to start. Now, I will say this. One guy that I do like that's not off the radar is Chez Reavie. I like Chez, playing really well right now, but he's going to be popular. A guy right below him, or right there with him at 7,400, I'm going to play Bubba Watson this week. I like it.
I like that call. I'm surprised you said
here.
that, but I liked it. I was a little nervous to say it, to be honest. But
there's a number of players on record talking about how this favors a right to left ball flight. He 25th at the WGC St. Jude. Iron play wasn't fantastic, which I don't like to see that, but I don't know. I got a feeling here with Bubba. I think he's coming around. I read something earlier that he's now employed Claude Harmon, Brooks Koepka's guy, to help him out with putting a little bit and help him out with like course management, kind of mental stuff. Bubba made a point in saying that it wasn't a swing coach because, right, Bubba's never had a swing coach, doesn't want one, wants to go to the grave having never had one. But I don't think he needs a swing coach. If you look at his numbers, for $7,400, he's since the restart. Okay, so since the restart, he's 35th. This is like a bunch of miscuts, or a few miscuts in it. He's 35th in approach, 25th in greens and regulation, 6th in strokes gained off the tee, and number 1 in par 4 scoring, 450 to 500. I mean, it's pretty solid for a guy at $7,400 who's a major champion who can contend. So I think I'll get some ownership leverage with Bubba. I'm going to skip around here a little bit. And then I'm going to go to a guy who I think you were on last week, and I just missed the boat. And he's burned me. He's burned me since the restart. And it's Shane Lowry at $7,500.
Yeah.
Tee to green has been pretty solid. Needs to maybe hit a couple more fairways would be nice. Losing a little bit off the tee. But his best putting surfaces are bent and POA. Played really well last week. Played very, very solid. Tee to green, gained over 7 strokes. If it gets windy, we know he can play in the wind. He's competed in majors. I don't know. I kind of like Lowry at 7,500.
He ended up in my best lineup last week that I had. And I will say this, a little plug for the Nut Hut. I can't remember what the information was, but we have some sharp listeners in there. And somebody threw out it, whether it was a stat or a little bit of inside information on him that really just kind of struck me. And that was how he ended up in there. So it's, again, it's not just like we talk about this all the time with the Nut Hut. It's not just us throwing out information. We got a lot of sharp listeners and folks out there. And that was where I got the tip to play Lowry. And it worked out pretty good.
Yeah. There's some names down here in the low 7s, though, that are very interesting to me. I mean, I think your boy Tom Lewis pops and is obviously confident. Corey Connors, when you think about iron play, tee to green, a safe cut making name, I think, at 7K. I think that's interesting. I think the same about Kevin Na. And I like old Seabez. I'll go back to the well with Seabez. Christian Bezenhout at 7K. Those are all some names I think are kind of interesting in that lower $7,000 range on DK. I just got to throw those out there. These are just names I'm mulling around and that kind of, they kind of hit me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
all right. Who are your plays in the 6K range? Who's catching your eye?
All right, so I'm going to give you two up top, and then I got one very cheap guy that I think could be an interesting play. But so I'm going to start with Brendan Steele, and I know you just can't stand his swing, and you hate this. You hate the Brendan Steele swing.
I freaking hate it.
Yeah, it's not great, but we've seen him play well. You look at his last three starts: T6 at the Travelers, 52nd at the Workday, but then he followed that up with a T13 at the Memorial. Looking at the stats right now, he's certainly checking a few boxes there. I mean, he's 40th in the field in ball striking. He's 30th actually in driving distance, 12th in par 4 scoring from 450 to 500 yards. He's 33rd in strokes gained approach. He is also 12th in that proximity stat I mentioned from 175 to 200 yards, which I think they'll be in that range a lot this week. So Brendan Steele, I think, makes a little bit of sense down here in the 6,900 range. Another guy that I like is Dylan Fratelli at 6,800. I like him as well. He is, he's good in that par 4 scoring stat. He's an accurate driver of the golf ball. Checks the box and off the tee when you're considering guys that are down this low. So I like some Fratelli, and he's been playing pretty well lately. You look at his last last 2 starts, he's got an 18th at the 3M. He was 22nd at the Memorial. So that was coming off a couple missed cuts, but we do know he got the COVID and then had to come back, and he missed a couple cuts, but then played well, like I said, at the Memorial and 3M. So I think Fratelli is a good play here at 6,800. Another guy now going really cheap is Tyler Duncan at 6,200. He has made 6 straight cuts on tour, which I think is pretty daggum good for a guy that you're getting at $6,200. Looking at the stats for him, you got to go way down for those. He's 3rd in the field in driving accuracy. He's 40th in that par 4 scoring from 450 to 500 yards. He checks the box in strokes gained approach. Good ball striker. So I think really cheap at 6,200. Can't really go wrong with trying a guy out like Tyler Duncan. Now, I don't know how much I'm going to go that low in a lot of my lineups, but I think, before you get to these PGA pros and everything else that are down here, he is certainly worth a look, and he's making cuts. And so, if you need a cheap guy to throw in your lineups and you're playing that studs and duds strategy, I think he can be a little fill in right there. So there's 3 guys in the 6K range that I like.
Okay. There's agreement with Fratelli. I kind of looked at Fratelli. He's interesting. I know he struggled a little bit, and I need to dive a little deeper. He struggled hitting some fairways, but that may be on the upswing here. But I'll start with the lowest option I have right now, which is HV3, Harold Varner III at $6,600.
I like him.
That's just a really good value for a guy who, plays and contends at a lot of PGA Tour events. He almost won the Genesis here at Riviera back in the spring, a comparable course on the West Coast. He finished 36th at last year's PGA Championship. He's got a 7th place finish at a Players Championship. Not a ton of, major championship experience for Harold, but, he's a longer player. So, long irons, shouldn't be too much of a problem for him. He's 3rd in greens and regulation and 15th in strokes gained approach since the restart. Very solid for HV3.
Yeah.
It's tough to ignore the ball striking ability and cut making ability of Lucas Glover at 6,700. It's really tough. Like if you're thinking, all right, I need to get 6 of 6 through for sure, and you're going to play a studs and duds. Lucas Glover feels like that kind of guy at $6,700. It just feels like a very safe, high floor guy. Is the upside all that great? Like, should you play him in the Millie? I don't know. Because, if you're going to play the Millie Maker, like you need 6 guys in your lineup. They're going to finish top 15, right? Or at the worst, you need the winner. You need 4 guys in the top 10, and you need one guy 15th or better. And I don't know that Lucas gives you that great of upside, but if you're playing in a smaller, lower entry contest, maybe higher dollar, I think Glover's an interesting cut maker at 6,700. Then above Fratelli, or right there with Fratelli, Luke List is actually a surprisingly good, tough golf course, kind of long, but longer. He's actually good at those. If you look historically over how he performs on par 70s that score difficult, he's actually very solid with that. And he's coming off a good form. He just won on the Korn Ferry Tour, which I know is not a PGA Tour victory, but it's a win, right? The guy's confident. He checks a lot of boxes since the restart. 41st in greens in regulation, 15th in strokes gained off the tee, 40th in par 4 scoring, 450 to 500 since the restart at $6,800. So like him. Finally, as I work up, two names at 6,900, I think Ryan Palmer and Matthias Schwab are very solid plays. I've been on Ryan Palmer a lot since the restart. Shockingly, I've got him right most weeks. I think I missed him on the 2 weeks he missed the cut. But I mean, look at him since the restart. Ryan Palmer is playing very, very well. I think he likes difficult golf courses. But I mean, since the restart, he's got an 8th place finish, a runner-up, and a 15th at the WGC last week. The irons were on point last week and the week before, or his week before at the Memorial, where he gained 10 strokes with the iron play. I think that's solid. And Matthias Schwab has also played very well, and he's played good in WGC events in the past with a T4 at the WGC HSBC back in the winter area. And he just played last week at the Barracuda and played very well, was making a lot of birdies, a lot of eagles. So clearly he's playing well. He's hitting the ball well. He's striking it well. I think he's an interesting name that'll also give you very low ownership because a lot of people don't know who the crap he is. So there you go. That's the DraftKings breakdown and preview. Oh, feels good. Feels good. I'm excited.
Yeah.
A lot more information to come in the Nut Hut. By the way, the Nut Hut is going to be a 3-way this week. It's a major. We're excited. And when I say 3-way, I mean we're going to video a 3-way. Me, Pat, and then Chalk Bomb, Ben Little, author of the Chalk Bomb, resident Tour Junkies genius, who spent over 2 hours in the Nut Hut on video last week. Major props to Ben for that. But we are all three going to get on the video on Wednesday night in the Nut Hut. We'll be in there for a couple hours at least on video, answering a ton of questions. That's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you check that out and you join for $10 a month or $90 a year. It's stupid, stupid cheap. And the chat room is not the only feature. There are other ancillary benefits to the Nut Hut. Before we get into the betting picks, though, Pat, I got to remind everybody that baseball is back and NBA is back. So, the boys are back out on the court. They're back out on the diamond. It's weird AF. There's cardboard figurines in the stands and managers and umpires having arguments from 6 feet away. But while we can't be at the park, there's plenty of action to be had from your own home. DraftKings, the leader in one-day fantasy sports, is putting you on the field and on the court with a shot to play for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Baseball, for example, pretty easy to play. You just pick 10 players, stay under the salary cap, pile up points for hits, runs, strikeouts, and more. And you can put all that baseball knowledge to the test and compete for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if baseball isn't for you, obviously we got a ton of golf action. We got a ton of NBA action. You got MMA. It's the best, all right? So with millions of dollars up for grabs every week and this week, no better place to have skin in the game than DraftKings. You can download the DraftKings app now and use promo code Tour Junkies to get a free shot at a share of millions of dollars. So you use our promo code, download the app, and you get a free entry into a Millie Maker contest with your first deposit. That's promo code Tour Junkies to get a free shot at a share of millions of dollars with your first deposit. Only at DraftKings. Minimum $5 deposit is required. Eligibility restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Thank you, DraftKings, for supporting the Tour Junkies as always. Been partnering with those folks for a few years. Appreciate it. Now, Pat, let's get into the sportsbook plays, shall we? Let's look at DK Sportsbook. Yes. Let's talk through some first impressions. I'm not going to be super hard and fast on some picks right here, but I'm just looking at the board. Obviously, DB's Big Balls betting card, which is up, I think, 40 units since the start of this new season in 2019. We're up 40 units. We'll be featured in the Chalk Bomb email that hits your inbox every Wednesday night of a PGA Tour event. If you want to subscribe, just go to tourjunkies.com. Bottom right-hand corner of any page, type in your email and subscribe to the Chalk Bomb. But that is where I will put my betting card for the week, and it will be a lot of fun this week to get that going. Pat, what do you think, man? I mean, as we look at the top of the board, you got JT at 9-1. Top of the board, you tend to love the shorter odds players, although you were not on JT last week. So shame on you. But who are your shorter? And I actually will give you one as well. I know this is a shocker, but I'm actually going to give you one short number as well. But I'll let you start and kind of work through this top range.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not really looking at, or too excited about JT at 9-1 or Brooks at 11-1. But when you get down to Xander at 18-1, there's some, it moved a little bit. It moved a little bit right there.
Ooh, and, you know what? So, mine did too. So both moved at the same time. That is the one that I had. Xander at 18-1.
I'm a fan of that. I think that is and you maybe put a couple units, maybe double up your units on him at 18-1.
Oh, I'll double up my unit on Xander at 18-1 for sure.
Yeah. And then Cantley at 25-1. Those are the two guys that are, if we're talking less than 30-1 or so, those are the two guys that I like right here. Other than that, they're a little bit longer. And if you need me to get into those, I can, unless you just want to digest those two right there. But that's really who I'm.
I'll kick down. Xander was my one, 18-1. I like that. Berger at 30-1, is interesting, but I bet him like a couple of weeks ago at 50-1. So it's hard for me to look at that number and stomach it. So hopefully you got on that one earlier when he was 50-1. I guess I would start at Webb, who is a guy that I didn't really get into a whole lot in the DFS portion just because I don't know. I was trying to give you some different names, but I think Webb at 33-1 is, one where I would start. And then I don't really have anybody until I hop down to now Morikawa. I bet a couple weeks ago as well. I think he was at 50-1. So it's hard for me to look at him at 35, but a guy who we didn't talk about at all in DFS, I think Tony Finau, 45-1. I will bet Tony Finau. I will likely put a little something on I can't win for crap unless it's the Puerto Rico Open, Tony Finau, because I just feel like at this point he's trolled us all so much by nearly winning a regular ass PGA Tour event that the one that he wins will be a major. I just feel like it'll just be a major. And he plays well at majors. Yeah, he does well at majors. So Finau's interesting. What else you got down here? I mean, what do you think about Abe Answer, 55-1?
See, I have Abe Answer listed down at 55-1. Now, there's some guys in here that, we talked about on the show that I'll bet, and then some that we didn't that I think are worth throwing a bet on. We didn't really talk about Victor Hovland. You mentioned him a little bit at the beginning of the show, talking about how much he's played lately. But I like him at 45-1.
Really?
I do like him.
I don't think he's going to win this tournament, man. Like, he's not going to win it. He can't. I mean, he shanked a couple of chips last week.
I know, and it's.
He shanked him. He's got to get that under control if he's going to close the door at a big event.
Everything else, he's doing extremely solid. I mean,
he
is just off the tee approach, everything.
I'm not on. I think he'd have to be like 60-1 or something for me to bet him.
Well, a guy you mentioned on the show as a fade that I think you could actually throw a few pennies down for a bet is Justin Rose, getting him at 75-1. I mean, this is still a world-class golfer that has won majors. He's taken a couple weeks off. That could have helped his game. So you're getting a big number for Justin Rose at 75-1. I think that makes sense. And I just have a few more that I'll mention. I talked about English on the show. He's at 100-1. I think he's a good play. Longer than that, I like Adam Hadwin at 150-1. Just an incredible putter. He's been playing fairly well recently. And then my longest shot bet you mentioned as well, and that is HV3 at 250-1.
Yeah,
I think that's
I saw that.
Throw a little bit on it. I mean, the guy, he could.
Yeah,
he could come out of nowhere and win this tournament. I could see him winning this tournament. I mean, he's been playing well. So
he's got the swag to win. To come out and win a major as well. I mean, Genesis is a good field. That's a strong field. He's competed in these things.
Well, he's also 16-1 for a top 10. So if you don't want to go out,
I wrote that down. I wrote that down
I
too.
think that's even one that you could really look at.
250 to 1 is a big number. You put a little quarter unit on that. You just need to throw a little.
And I got some other top 10s, but I can let you.
Yeah, I got those too. Let's hold off on those. I think Phil at 90 to 1. I'm buying into the Phil hype right now. 90 to 1 Phil. He had to watch Bones navigate the course all day on Sunday with JT, and there's a little beef there, I guess. I don't. He's just playing well. California. He's always loved Cali events. I don't know. I think Phil at 90 to 1 feels special. Feels tingly. Could Ryan Palmer win this event at 125 to 1? Nearly won the Memorial, had Rahm not kind of run away with it a little bit, which is a very tough course, tough field, tough conditions. I think 125 to 1 is an interesting number. Again, there are 115 guys at best that could literally that have a chance of making the cut. 115. There are probably 80 that have a legitimate chance of winning this golf tournament. So a guy who just finished runner-up at a tough golf course in tough conditions against a strong field just a few weeks ago, Ryan Moore, at 125 to 1, I like. Another guy at 125 to 1 that I don't have to really explain that much is Bubba Watson. We talked about Bubba in the DFS segment. Obviously a major winner can I think the right to left suits him here at Harding Park. And he actually plays well in California too. Even for a Baghdad, Florida boy, tends to play well in Cali. Another player that I mentioned, and to win, this would be tough, but Luke List at 175 is just something that just catches my eye. And then I had HV3 as well. So in terms of outrights, those are just some initial names that kind of pop for me. So there you go. Top 10s, you mentioned HV3 at 16 to 1. I like that. I like Joel Damon at 14 to 1. We haven't talked about Joel yet. We've shared a lot about Joel in the Nut Hut chat every week, and it's been pretty good. Last week was pretty good. And he played well last week. He just had a couple blow-up holes that really did him in. But 14 to 1 for a top 10, I like that. A guy that we've not mentioned for a top 10 that's even longer than HV3 and Joel is Cameron Tringali at 18 to 1. Tringali tends to be a, very solid tee to green, like accurate, great iron player, like really good iron player, like top-notch iron player. So if he can hit it in the fairway and use those irons to his advantage, drop a few putts, I think a top 10 for Tringali at 18 to 1 is a nice number. I don't get too chubbed up about, a 6 to 1 top 10. So there you go. That's it for me. And I do have one top 20 bet.
I don't have any top 20, but I'll give you a few here in this top 10 range. I think Doc Redman, who is a guy we've seen now, he hasn't played great in his last couple of events, but you're getting him at 20 to 1 to finish in the top 10. I think he could pop here and just have a good week, and has been a solid player since the restart for the most part. This is a crazy number for me. And look, he hasn't played all that great. Now, he did make the cut at the 3M, and I think he was like dead last week at the WGC. But he's still, a guy that's played a lot of majors, has a lot of experience, and that's Rafa Cabrera Bello. We're getting him at 28 to 1 to finish in the top 10. That's a big number for him. And then a guy, sort of a local Augusta guy that we've seen play well on the West Coast before. Pebble Beach, he won, things like that. Vaughn Taylor, 33 to 1, top 10. I could just see him sliding in, getting a little backdoor top 10. So big number for a top 10, I think, for Vaughn Taylor. Now, he's not long off the tee, but he is very accurate. Good with his irons, pretty good putter. So I think he could make a little sense as just a flyer top 10 play. So there you go.
Okay. I had one top 20, and it was just a name that stuck out to me at a big number for a top 20 at 14 to 1. Keith Mitchell. Maybe I'm a sucker for Keith Mitchell because I hit him at 150 to 1 a couple years ago to win the Honda. But, and he sucks on bent and POA. He loves Bermuda, so that's not good for him. But he can have good weeks. I talked about Ryan Palmer playing well at the Memorial a couple weeks ago. Well, that same week, Mitchell finished 22nd at Jack's Place in a strong field, tough conditions, tough golf course. Finished 5th at Bay Hill earlier in the year. Another one finished 16th at the Waste Management earlier in the year. So I mean, he's got top 10 upside. So top 20 upside, 14-1 for a top 20 bet. I think Keith Mitchell is, just one of those names that can pop. He's either going to miss the cut or that's what he's going to do. Like, that's the thing. He's either going to top 25 or he's going to miss the cut. That's kind of his MO lately. And right now there just aren't a lot of matchups out there right now on DraftKings, but keep it locked to the Chalk Bomb email on Wednesday night. We'll have some matchup discussion and some more betting discussion, as well as obviously in the Nut Hut. So there you go. There's the betting. Pat, let's wrap it up with the final segment tonight. We're going to have a little fun, but I got to be honest with you. We had scheduled the Chunk and Run segment where we just tackle a listener question about anything golf related, and then we tackle a listener question about anything not golf related. But I have to do a little we have another segment that we'd like to do called the putter throw. And the putter throw is when we just get freaking pissed about something and we rant, and it can be about anything, golf or non-golf related. Can I take just a second to do a little mini putter throw segment real quick?
By all means.
Do you mind? Nick Faldo's followers are baby back bitches is what they are. I cannot believe
checks
believe the response. So yesterday I'm watching coverage for the 9th weekend in a row religiously, and they were doing a breakdown of Brooks Koepka's swing, Konica Minolta. I called my 10-year-old over as a golf stud, and I wanted him to watch something because he tends to get his head out in front of the golf ball too much. And Brooks does a really good job of staying behind it, keeping his head back, keeping his head. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I said, come here, watch this. And Faldo mentions for the 50-11th time in the last 9 weeks about, look how he really gets his shoulder under there. He just gets his shoulder right under his chin. I really like to see that. That's a terrible Nick Faldo accent, but you know what I mean? And so I just I said, dang, like every week Faldo tells us to put our shoulder under our chin. So all I did is I tweeted, if at Nick Faldo. Okay, so I tagged Nick. Nick follows us. Okay, he's followed us for a long time. We follow Nick. He seems like a nice bloke, a nice mate, right? And I tagged him. I said, if at Nick has mentioned the left shoulder under the chin once, he has mentioned it 1,000 times in the last few weeks. Well, holy smokes. Like, I might as well have said something extremely controversial in 2020. I might as well have said, like, Donald Trump is my dad and I love him and he can do no wrong, or he's the Messiah. Like, I could have said that. So Nick quote tweets it and says, where is it? He says, if you've got, oh no, wait a minute. He's quote tweeted this like twice. Okay. I'll be fascinated to hear from your experiences at playing at the highest level, what you tribute to all your successes. Do tell. And boy, the people that follow Nick Faldo must be majority shareholders in Magisil, because they are all a bunch of twats. They were the most sensitive bunch I have ever seen on Twitter, and Twitter is full of sensitive bunches of people. They were coming at me. Well, have you won 6 majors and a President's Cup or a Bridal Cup? Blah blah blah. Have you? Well, what do you know about the golf swing? And you're just a bunch of troll Twitter people. And one guy was like, I can't wait to see the followers you lose as a result of this. Meanwhile, our followers have gone up thanks to Nick for quote tweeting it. We appreciate that. We've had people talk about just insane stuff, comments on it.
Extremely. You call me sensitive. My goodness.
Yeah, they must be all a bunch of Pats walking around. I've never in my life seen it. It's insane. It's
just an observation too. Like you're not allowed to criticize somebody who's a 6-time major, and you didn't even really criticize him. You just said, "Hey, I wouldn't mind a different swing tip or whatever because you throw that out all the time. Like I could not. I mean, it was just.
It was this one guy. I commented. I said it was just an observation. People, calm down. I said, calm down. We tagged the sir. We weren't dodging the observation. We're just giving the sir a friendly observation that maybe share a different nugget considering his infinite wisdom in his 6 freaking majors. This guy's commenting, it's fair to say that by attacking a man who is 12th on the most majors of all time list that you have upset a lot of people. Now, I can tell this dude's a Euro. No offense to our Euros, but this guy's a sook. He goes, whilst it's commendable that you recognize that with the eloquent calm the shit down you asked us all to do, perhaps further comments are unwarranted and unwelcomed. I mean,
my God.
The fact that these people think I have offended so many people. One guy sent me a thing about saying that I've embarrassed myself completely on social media. I cannot believe the response. If you guys are sitting on the toilet taking a shit today and you want some entertainment, go find that tweet of Sir Nick where he quote tweeted it. Don't go to our tweet. Go to Sir Nick's tweet where he quote tweeted it and read the replies. I mean, either his followers are the most loyal bunch of just diehards I've ever seen, or he has 140 ghost accounts, like where it's all him and he's just logging in, commenting. Meanwhile, we're DMing Nick on the side. And I'm like, bro, your people are off the chain. And he's like, haha, golfers need reminding that left shoulder needs to get turned. And I'm like, I mean, he's not mad. Like, Nick's not mad. He's
not mad at us.
He's having a friendly back and forth, but the amount of people losing their freaking mind is crazy. If you want a little bit of entertainment, go look at that. I had a friend from Florida who's actually neighbors with Nick Faldo tweet me and go, bro, I have never seen people get so worked up. He's like, I've never seen so much vaginal bleeding in my life, and I'm a doctor. These people are insane. Yeah, burner accounts. That's what it is. Either they're all Nick's burner accounts or I don't know. Anyway, that's my mini putter throw. Pat, Kyle Senahy, back to the chunk and run. Kyle Senahy wants to know your most embarrassing TJ moment. Now, mine and yours should be the same moment.
I don't know if it's going to be.
So that's one reason why I kind of took the putter throw liberty, because I think that it should be the same moment, and you're going to talk about it, or I'm going to talk about it, and we're just going to cover it in that one hit.
I don't know.
It should be the same moment.
I don't know if it's going to be the same moment.
Okay.
It could be though. It could be though.
Do tell your most embarrassing TJ moment.
I'll give you the side moment. This is not what I thought was the most embarrassing moment, because it created many positives from it. But that was the Bohm moment where, we all know where Bohm came from. And videos out there where I'm, after the Ryder Cup, might be a little tipsy, and DB passes me the basketball, and I'd say I'm going to hit this, Bohm, and it's an air ball. But that was a good moment. And so if you're a new listener to the show, that's where Bohm comes from and why we say it a lot and everything there. But for me, I got to say, probably the most embarrassing moment is being a guest on another show and falling asleep on the show.
Yep. Ding, 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 ding. That's it. That was also my most embarrassing moment.
I mean, you get asked to be on another show and you are so hammered. Let's just go ahead and
falling asleep is not the word. Like, it's not like you worked a night shift and you passed out.
Passed out on the show. It was funny, but it was quite embarrassing. Funny. And I'm sure it was embarrassing for you, as said TJ co-host. So I have to say that, and I thought there was a chance that might be what you were thinking too, but that is definitely by far the most embarrassing amongst many different things. You can talk about me misspelling, or pronouncing names and things like that, stuff like that.
That's little stuff. That's little stuff.
There's a lot of little stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when you're you're a guest on another podcast who respects you and respects what you've done and wants to highlight you to their listeners. And, it's an opportunity for you to shine in front of their listeners that maybe don't know who you are. And so then maybe they become listeners themselves. I would love to know if there was anybody that heard that and that was their very first exposure to TJ, and now they are listeners as a result. I would love to know that. I would absolutely love to know that. Yeah. I don't even remember the name of the show. It was like 3-4 years ago. Was it? It's not around anymore. The show's not in existence anymore. But it was a while ago. But when they kick it to your co-host to get his thoughts on something, and it's silent for an awkward amount of time, and then you try to pick up, a good co-host would be like, well, Pat must have dropped off, something must have, blah, 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 blah. But then in the middle of you talking, you hear, you hear someone going through, sleep apnea on the phone because they passed out. That takes it to a different level. And that was an amazing episode, amazing time. And they published it. I don't know if you can still go back and listen to it because they're not a show anymore, but they did publish the full us discovering that Pat had passed out and Pat snoring. It was all published. It was fantastic. Definitely my most embarrassing moment. Although,
and then at the end, it took them. I mean, I'm embarrassed for them as well because I never hung up. So after y'all was done, they had to wait till I figured it out and woke up and hung up so that they could, I guess, download whatever it was.
Because it wouldn't download until you hung up. You had to wait online for like 20 minutes after we were done. Yeah. I will give a couple brief honorable mentions for myself. I had the worst chafing situation, which shout out to our boys at the Chill Boys. For if they would have been around at this time, it maybe not would have happened. But when we went to the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow a couple years ago, I had a really bad chafing situation that went down because it was so freaking hot and humid. Hot. And the last day, I'm walking around with my wife like I'm Danny DeVito in the Batman movie where he's the penguin, and I'm like waddling. That was embarrassing. And you know what moment I thought of, Pat, that I don't think you and I have ever really talked about, but when I look back on it, I'm a little embarrassed. PGA show, probably 3 years ago when we went. It's 5:00, and so some of the cool booths like Travis Matthew open up, open beer, open bar, and I'm a few beers deep, and they're playing some really good music, and they have a karaoke person in there, and I went down and did California Love karaoke.
Yes.
I rapped California Love, which I'm not a bad rapper. I do have to say that. But when I look back at it, I think to myself, that was probably a tough look. There was some people in the industry in there. There was some people we knew in there. There was some influencers in there in the Travis Matthew booth. And looking back on it, I don't feel like I really remember the crowd getting too into it. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to get them there, but
so
they weren't really.
Read the crowd improperly, and
I kind of just read it, but it was just one of those brave moments where I was like, oh man, I'm gonna go down here and rap California Love, and I did it. But looking back, it wasn't the best. Anyway, good chunk and run question there from Kyle. Our final chunk and run question of the night. And we're going to end it with this from Mr. Chris Jackson. Thanks, Chris. Do golfers have a different approach pre-cut versus post-cut? So do they approach the tournament and the golf course differently leading up to the cut line on Friday versus after? And I think the answer, Chris, is yes. I think a lot of golfers and caddies that we've talked to would tell you the answer is yes. And the only reason is, a couple reasons, but I think, I know Joel's mentioned this before, like Joel Damon's mentioned, if you get off to a bad start on Thursday, it immediately starts creeping in there, right? Like, oh God, oh shit. Now I'm hanging on, now I got to climb all the way back to make this cut number. I think certain guys can just play a little tighter leading up to the cut on Friday because they're trying to hang it on, and so there's more pressure. Maybe they're making worse decisions in terms of, should I go at this pin or where's the miss here? So they're making different decisions. Whereas you got weekend, if you make it through the cut and you're on the weekend, there's a sense of somewhat relief that, now it's kind of a different tournament, right? The tournament almost starts over on Saturday. And I think it's also different for different players. I mean, does Justin Thomas, who has millions of dollars and all the FedEx Cup points he could possibly need, is he stressing about starting off to a bogey start on a Thursday at a regular, at the 3M Open in the same way that Joel or, Kevin Streelman or Cameron Tringali are? Probably not, because it just means something different to those guys. But I do think there is a clear difference for a lot of players in how they approach approach the golf course pre-cut versus post-cut.
Yeah, I agree. I think that a couple things, when you can also kind of take it between, like, we're in a major this week, so it's a little bit different than maybe a regular tour event. But you got your guys out there that are, they're just wanting to make the cut because they're trying to keep status, they're trying to do whatever. And so, yeah, they're going to probably be a little more serious come Thursday and Friday. And then if they make it through the cut, then we'll see what happens. I think for these top players in the world, it's a little bit different. I saw Jack Nicklaus during the Memorial talking about, they asked him about, what was your approach to the week of a major and or a big tournament? Like, what did you do? And he said, well, typically on Thursday, I just wanted to play pretty well. I didn't want to come out the gates hot, be, leading after the first round. I just wanted to have a good tournament. Tiger's the same way. We saw that a lot with him over his career. Just kind of be there right near, just a good solid 2-3 under round, whatever it was, depending on how difficult the course was. And then Friday, keep that going. And then Saturday, like these bigger guys, that's the day. We call it moving day for a reason, but that is the day, like Jack said, where he really wanted to be on, especially in a major. Like, he wanted to have his best day and build up to that in a tournament on Saturday. And then on Sunday, just keep it going and keep it together, but not necessarily, feel like he had to go like shoot 10 under or whatever. But that's kind of, I think, how you see these bigger names approach the tournament, is those first couple of days, they just want to get their game in order, keep it there. And then Saturday, really try to go low and get themselves in position. I think that's kind of the way they typically, work, especially for these majors. But, the guys that are, that are struggling, or not struggling, but the ones that are, that need to keep their card and things like that, I think Monday or Thursday and Friday is, they're just grinding, and they want to make sure they make that cut. And then after that, there's a little bit of gravy with everything else. And, once they get to be better players, they'll probably change their attitude. But so I think that's kind of how, my opinion of the way players are when it comes to an event.
Good question, Chris. Thanks for sending that in. If you want to send in a chunk and run question to get on the show, you can send that to info@tourjunkies.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching the show. If you watched on YouTube, we appreciate that. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes if you enjoyed the show. That would help us out. On Apple Podcasts, rate the show, review the show. 5 stars helps us out. It's free to do. It only takes you a couple minutes. And check out all the content over on tourjunkies.com. Pat will have his fantasy golf sommelier article out on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week for the PGA Championship, talking about wine, talking about liquor, talking about beer in Cali, and relating it to players and picks. It's going to be good stuff. And then we got the Nut Hut on Wednesday, and the Chalk Bomb on Wednesday. It's going to be huge. I might also be in the Nut Hut on Thursday morning, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you guys so much. It's going to be a great week. We appreciate all the support. The PGA Championship is here. First major of 2020. What a weird year. But this is going to be an exciting week. Let's get to it. Let's have some green screens. Thank you guys. See ya. Out.